Trust me, I know what I'm doing.
Hammer! In my office right now!
Iain, you scum-sucker. I think it's fair to say that we can now trust Sledge.
Well, in performance of his duties, yes.
And in life in general. Following last week's show finale, I think he's a more trustworthy, more human person.
He certainly seemed to make some adjustments, but will they stick?
Let's chat about that later on. How are you scum-sucker?
I'm not too bad. Can you stop calling me a scum-sucker?
From now on I will.
All out of insults.
It's the last ever episode of Sledgecast. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
Fun.
It's been good. It certainly was different from what we'd done before.
Was it different to what you expected?
Yeah, I think it was. I think I expected it to be... I'm not sure. I think I expected it to take longer and to be harder work, but it was enjoyable and it seemed to kind of... Time flew in. It was good.
Not having watched it regularly in the last 5-10 years, and as I said at the start of this, at the outset of this project, I wasn't an expert.
Yeah. You feel you're an expert now?
No, not really an expert, but the point I was making was going to be that I was worried. I didn't know if the show could hold up over the 41 episodes. I thought perhaps we would start to pick holes in it and it become repetitive.
Right. Well, I mean, that's always a risk with any sitcom because you've got a great idea, but how long can it hold its end up? Because people get used to the idea. It's not funny to do the same things in episode 40 that you did in episodes 2 and 3.
And especially the ridiculous nature of the characters and the show itself. I think it was quite a feat, not only of the writing, but from the actors as well. They were able to carry this through, so it didn't feel stale. It didn't feel as if they were treading the same grounds. There were a level of ingenuity. They tried different things. They approached it from different angles, which I think kept it fresh over the 2 seasons.
Definitely. I would agree with that completely.
So, what do you want to do today then? Last ever episode, how will we approach this? What do you want to chat about first?
Well, I think we probably need to put the show into a bit of context. How does it hold up in the 21st century? How do the characters look to us today?
Does it hold up, in fact?
For the most part, with some exceptions.
I would agree with that. Chat me through your thoughts.
Okay, the most obviously out of its time episode I felt was the Soviet one, the Cold War episode, which just doesn't make sense to anyone who didn't live through the Cold War, I would think. I mean, you and I did. We are old enough that we remember the Cold War, but sure. I would think a younger audience now would not understand some of the humour in that episode.
Yeah, I partially agree with you. I think that unless you're very young or very stupid, you are aware of the relationship or Soviet-American history, so you know there was some antagonism there.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look even today, where Russia is accused of all sorts of interference with American politics and public life, there's not the same painting of them as a big bad or a imminent threat or a potential danger that there was in the 80s in particular.
Sure. I think we've discussed many times, there's a lot of topical humour.
Yeah. There was references to politicians that weren't successful.
And scandals at the time with
the Iran-Contra thing came up.
Tammy Baker or Baker. I'm never sure what that is. I think it's spelt with a double K. B-A-K-K-E-R. So I'm not sure if that's a Backer or a Baker.
I'm going to guess Backer.
Yeah, so she was referenced on a number of occasions. I suppose you can put it into context. You know they're lampooning someone.
Yeah, whether you pick up on exactly who it is, they'll dictate the extent to which that particular joke lands. But no one's going to find everything that was said funny. And even at the time, I don't think that would be true. The other thing that probably doesn't hold up so well are when they touch on sexuality, alternative lifestyles, gender identity, things like that. They don't quite have the subtlety of touch maybe you would hope for nowadays.
Yeah, you would rewrite some of that, I think, with the modern eye, the modern...
Having been sent by the studio on a 3-week sensitivity training course.
Yeah, but we have to remember that certainly Sledge as a character is not meant to be sensitive.
No, but I think, and we discussed this when these jokes came up, it's not so much the characters' views as the targets of the jokes. So if you're laughing at someone's expense because of their sexuality or because of their lifestyle, then that isn't really okay.
We have to say, though, that those incidents were few and far between.
Yeah, there's not much of that. I mean, there isn't any of it being treated differently from that, so anytime it comes up, it's an issue, but it doesn't come up that often.
The overall performances in comedy, I thought, did stand up. You could still watch this and laugh. Obviously, it was helped severely by the writing and by David Rasche, especially. His performances were tremendous.
Yeah, and I think also the camaraderie or chemistry between Anne-Marie Martin and Harrison Page and David Rasche as well, I think they worked well together. Particularly, I would say the second half of season 2 and the last few episodes of season 1, they were the high points.
There was a slight dip, I think, at the beginning of the second season where the characters went a little bit skew-whiff.
And I think the middle part of season 1 towards the end was, not the last few episodes, but just before that, there was a sort of a lull as well. But apart from those two windows, it was mostly nicely done.
And whilst some of the comedy was based on very topical references, there was some that are, or were, universal. So you've got the Elvis episode.
Anything where Sledge went undercover was great.
Yes. I mean, you also have the Humphrey Bogart episode, and you've got the RoboCop one, which again could have been topical and died a sort of death, but...
Yeah, you're relying on RoboCop being iconic or at least cult, which I think is fair to say it qualifies as.
The politics, I think, today are just as relevant, if not even more so.
Yeah, I think a lot of the lampooning of the Republican Party would still... I mean, obviously they've taken themselves beyond parody, some would say nowadays, but it would still hold up for a lot of people, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Police brutality?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that right at the start, and I don't know that we'd really dug into it that much. I think this show obviously came out on the back of some riots and so on.
Yeah, but it was pre-Rodney King.
Yeah, so it's not quite as funny. But then, I'm not sure, I think the police brutality that gets referred to in this, it's not as malicious as people would associate that phrase with, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I'd also suggest as well that it's not as institutional.
It's one guy as well.
One guy who the rest of the department don't agree with and think is an extremist.
Yeah, and it's hyperbolic as well. It's like chaining a guy to the outside of a car, making him run around the block and up and down the freeway and stuff. It's not punishing someone for no reason, who hasn't committed a crime, who isn't suspected of a crime.
And it's certainly not punishing someone for being a minority or, it's just general. He's looking to punish bad guys.
Yeah.
So, I think the politics are just as important today. And I think Alan Spencer would have a field day if he was writing or creating this type of character in 2017.
Yeah, I think you would need to do it differently now.
I think that's because shows like Sledge Hammer have existed and have been built upon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I also think that policing has changed. I don't think the setup wouldn't be quite as simple anymore. I think things are a bit more specialised. You don't have that same thing. And also, not only has policing changed, I don't think maybe the precinct works in quite the same way nowadays, but people's politics have become quite polarised. So you would find a lot of, or maybe a lot more pushback if you were being political in this way.
In what sense?
Well, a lot of people no longer see nuance in comedy. Mm-hmm. They'll see this as being aggressive towards their politics, even if it's just a joke or a few jokes about that particular subject.
And you don't think that would have been the case back in the 80s?
I suspect folk might have... Well, two things. Firstly, I think maybe folk wouldn't have seen it quite as personally because folk maybe weren't as quite
engaged,
or maybe didn't identify as their politics as much as we see nowadays. And also without things like social media, you wouldn't have groups of folk sharing those views and, perpetuating them.
Sure. Okay, let's move on to what the future may hold for the main characters. Shall we start with Sledge and Dory. And is it Sledge and Dory?
Well, are we assuming that the nuclear bomb thing doesn't happen?
Yes, we are. Let's forget that.
Yeah, I think we discussed this in last week's episode. I think both of them were very well aware that he was not joking when he made his proposal. I suspect they might give things a go together. I think Dory made it clear earlier in the episode that she would be around if he wanted her to be. Whether it would work out would depend a lot on how Sledge adapted to things changing.
I agree. I think that after getting over that initial hurdle, making that big decision, that big change, I think it's going to be far easier for him in the future.
Yeah. The other thing I would worry about is I get the impression from the show that Sledge cares much more about Dory than she cares about him. I know she cares for him, but I think his feelings for her came across as being much more specific and stronger.
Yeah, I think what that might be is that she was obviously more balanced anyway.
Yeah.
So doesn't have the same need or the same fear, the same underlying drive. So when he snapped, as it were, and changed his attitude, it went from complete isolation and acceptance of being alone to letting someone in. And I think that, yeah, Dory could probably find friendship, love, whatever, with someone else.
Yeah.
I don't think Hammer had any other options up until that point.
Yeah. I think, though, the other thing that I noticed is even before his Damascene conversion, whenever he was talking about Dory when she wasn't there, it was always positive and he was always affectionate about her. Whenever she talked about Sledge when he wasn't there, it was always kind of critical.
Yeah, but that would make sense because she was, on the whole, fairly normal and didn't have a lot of things about her that warranted criticism, whereas she did because he was a maniac.
Yeah, but if you had strong feelings for someone, maybe you would be looking to excuse that behaviour rather than saying, yeah, he's a hopeless case.
Yeah, but I would suggest that perhaps she herself, it wasn't that she had strong feelings, perhaps she was trying to suppress them herself and she hadn't realised or accepted that.
So when she says he'll never change, that's kind of resignation rather than an observation.
I'd like to think so. I mean, my personal view is that over the next 5-10 years, from the final episode of the show, they get married, a couple of kids, Sledge retires.
Okay.
Dory is promoted, she's a senior cop, then she retires. That's the thing as well, Sledge is what, they're in their 40s at this point? Maybe Doro is mid to late 30s.
I would say she's about 10 years younger than him.
Oh,
I reckon he's about 42, 43 and she's maybe 34, 35.
Yeah, sure. So he retires first, they have kids, he retires, and they're living happily ever after. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I think he would no longer need that barrier that he put up, that sort of character that he portrayed in public life to protect his feelings, but I suspect he might use it for fun, sometimes to amuse himself at work, perhaps.
Well, do you think that Sledge wants to be and can be a cop without that shield, that armour that he put up, not having that gun? Do you think he could go back into work the next day and just be a normal cop?
No, I don't think he would. I think he would put the character back on, but I think he would be more comfortable because he would know he was putting it on for the benefit of his colleagues. I think, and it would then become a joke between he and Dory rather than just a sad thing for himself.
Okay, that's interesting. For me, I don't know. I could see him chucking it. Going private, taking another job.
Maybe security.
Yeah, but a security consultant. Not like a mall cop or something like that.
Or maybe he'll go and work in a shooting range or something where he can have fun.
But even then, I think once he's thrown away his gun...
He's done with guns, you think?
He's done with guns, and that's why I'm not sure if he can be a cop. I think it's all or nothing. He's now accepted that. I'm not sure if he can just become a normal cop.
He could maybe go and work in the microfiche library with that woman, whose name I forget.
Yeah, yeah, possibly. But I think what we're both agreeing on here, are we, that it's a happy ending for them both?
I like to think so. I think certainly Sledge deserves that, and probably Dory as well.
Trunk,
I think his ulcers might heal.
Well, yes, Trunk's future is hugely related to Sledge's, depending on what happens with him.
Sure. I think, are we assuming that Trunk's reconciliation with his wife was maintained from the point that we saw them get back together?
I think so.
Yeah. I think a lot of the worry and the concern that he has over Hammer is concern for Hammer. So if he sees Hammer and Dodo happy, Sledge no longer with all the hijinks and the antics, he might be able to relax a little bit and not be up to high-do quite so much.
So you think perhaps he sees out his career in a less stressful manner, retires when he's meant to retire, and see, in my mind, that happens. He retires, but you see him later on his front porch, retired and content, but with the occasional twitch or flashback to him, or perhaps he wakes up in the middle of the night screaming "Hammer!"
That would be unfortunate for Mr.
Yeah,
Trunk.
they can't quite.
Yeah, he's got this habit of showing up on the scene at the last minute, so could well be he ends up killed or injured in the line of duty.
No.
Yeah, I would say so.
No.
I think Trunk gets shot in the face.
Okay.
That'd be sad though.
That would be terrible. Let's not have that happen.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, headcanon is changing.
Yes. You see, in one respect, I like the idea of Sledge still being Sledge, coming to visit Trunk when he's retired and still harassing him.
Agitating him.
And in that sense, yeah. But it's more playful.
You're thinking of the old man in the sledge when he goes to the nursing home. And
Yeah, that type of thing.
he says, "Come on, Captain, one last case."
Yes. But as I said before, I'm not sure if I can see... For me, Sledge is like that. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if he can put that act on. That act was a personality trait forced on him by himself. And once he's got over that hurdle, I can't see him just pretend to be Sledge.
I don't know.
Anyway.
What do you think about some of the others? What about Mayjoy?
Mayjoy will be fired for any number of reasons, probably some sort of sex pest.
Yeah,
Incident.
and jailed, I would imagine.
Yeah, he is not a nice character.
No, he's a horrible person.
He was.
He didn't have any redeeming qualities. He was a terrible friend. He's a terrible policeman, and I don't even know, terrible husband, I guess. From what we
can gather, yes, he wasn't very nice.
Yeah, so...
Reiterate, I mean, Leslie Morris was fabulous at playing Mayjoy.
Yeah, he gave the right feel for Mayjoy, but the character was an unpleasant piece of work.
Yeah, so let's hope he gets fired.
Yeah, and jailed, and then treated badly in prison.
Okay. As a ex-cop sex pest would be.
Yes.
Okay.
Daly,
once Mayjoy leaves, I think it was probably some sort of sexual harassment at work. I mean, we've seen that in the...
when they were... They Call Me Mr. Trunk.
Daly goes on to become an inspector, fairly senior, very professional.
Absolutely, I think she's got all the traits required to go far in the job.
In fact, maybe she takes over from Trunk.
Perhaps, maybe if Sledge steps back, she becomes Dodo's new partner.
Oh,
That'd be a good show.
yeah.
Spin-off.
Could be, yes. Daly and Darrow. Mind you, maybe Darrow becomes the new captain.
Maybe.
She's more senior, seen more action.
Yeah, it's possible.
I'm going with that, actually. I'm going to go with Dory becoming captain.
And Daly becoming inspector.
Inspector, yeah. Our friend, Norman Blates.
Yes, I believe he goes into the family business.
Working closely with his mother.
That's the one.
Yeah. One of my favourite characters.
It's great.
He's brilliant, isn't he? In my mind, Blate's semi-retired. He continues his job, progresses through the ranks, and today would have his own podcast.
I agree, and I like to think the podcast would be him going through the collection he's made of things he's taken from bodies and talking about the stories behind them that he's made up in his own head to justify taking the items.
It's a comedy podcast.
Absolutely.
He cracks wise.
He's got a dead guest on every week.
Yeah. And perhaps he does the occasional autopsy.
Yes, live on air.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be good. That'd be compelling listening.
I actually think there is such a thing, not with Blaze, but I seem to remember listening to a podcast about podcasting, which was looking at obscure and niche areas, and one of them was a coroner podcast, which discussed the business of being a coroner.
Why not?
A death doctor.
You can understand the appeal. Dead people don't complain. And if they're complaining, they're not dead.
The comics, did you read them?
I did.
What did you think?
I enjoyed them. I preferred the first one. What about you?
I think I preferred the second one. We should state, to make it clear, neither of us are what you would call comic book fans.
No, so I don't have a lot of context, but it did, or they both read as comic booky, if that makes sense, from a non-expert position.
I think it's what a non-comic book reader thinks a comic book is.
Yeah, it's got all those sort of extra things you wouldn't have in a TV show.
Yeah. Firstly, I would say that they stick fairly well to the characters and the type of plots that we have.
Yeah.
In fact, the first one reminded me, it's called Creep House, and it reminded me of a little bit of Last of the Red Hot Vampires.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's got a woman who is the host of a murder-themed TV show, and all the previous hosts have... Well, she is this female host called Satana, and she's the third Satana. I think the first two have been murdered. They speak to the TV producer who brought in this idea of this female host to replace the aging male host, and it turns out he was the one that was... Spoiler alert. He was the one that's knocked off these other ones because he thinks if he kills enough of them, they'll have no choice but to bring him back. I'm not sure his logic was quite sound on that particular occasion.
Also, some trivia was revealed
Okay.
in the first comic. So San Francisco is confirmed.
Okay, I saw that in the second one. Was that in the first one as well?
I think it was, yeah.
Okay, it's the first panel of the second one as well.
Sledge's mother is still alive, apparently.
Really?
Mm-hmm. In the first one, that was mentioned.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, I was quite tired when I read these.
And Dory was referred to as an inspector, I think, by Satana.
I think that's just a mistake because I don't think these could possibly be set after episode 41.
Yeah.
So I think these are set previous. I think it's just a mistake that Satana has made.
We've got them in front of us just now. Let's have a quick look. So the first one was published when? The 1st of February, it says here. Now that would be 1988, yeah? For $1.
So when was the last episode aired? It was in February, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's around about the same time.
$1, $1.25 Canadian, and 40 pence here in the UK.
That's more. That's less than I paid for it. I have to be honest. Did you enjoy the topical adverts?
I thought they were fantastic. Yeah, reading through, you have some. Looking here, we've got what we have. We've got American comics.
The 4 new modules of the Marvel Superheroes MX series from TSR. It's a gaming thing.
Yeah, big Konami advert. We've got the Goonies 2.
For the NES system.
Yeah, Top Gun, Russian Attack, Track and Field.
I've got an advert here for the Sega Master System. I had a friend who had that.
Yeah.
We were playing Sensible Soccer for hours upon hours every weekend.
Sensible Soccer was fantastic.
What a game. Did you find that Trunk looked a bit green in some of these frames?
Yeah. What's this advert here? Telling you how to be a comic book writer. Okay, so it says, this may be the chance you've been waiting for. If you'd like to be a Marvel Comics writer, penciler, inker, colorist, or letterer, this book was made for you. It's your chance to try out our creative skills under simulated combat conditions, as close as possible to actual professional working conditions. And you've got to buy this pack for $12.95, and you've got to send this coupon away to Marvel Comics, Department T, 387 Park Avenue South, New York City, NY 1016.
What an opportunity.
Now, I'm not... Oh, there's one for M&M's. Chocolate fun for everyone. The milk chocolate melts in your mouth, not your hand. Now, that was a strapline for...
Smarties?
No. What's that? Minstrels.
Minstrels. Okay, that's a good sweet, the minstrel.
Yeah, I do like a minstrel. Apparently these are well-known people in the comics industry. You've got Jim Salicrup, who was the writer. Alex Saviuk, Sam De La Rosa, Rick Parker, Evelyn Steen.
Are these well-known people?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it was published by Marvel. So,
yeah, I think it's fairly mainstream. It only seems to have lasted 2 episodes. The first one trails the second, so I presume it was a 2-episode deal.
What's the second one about?
It's about a guy dressed as Spider-Man. It's actually mostly about police corruption.
Yeah.
I think there's Commissioner Schmishner.
Yeah.
And Warden who get involved in this internal drama. They take Sledge's gun from him. They make him use a standard regulation issue gun. He gets very upset. But in the end, he catches the bad guy and all is well.
Of course. This one here's got a profile on Bob Budiansky, who I believe is very well known. A little interview with him here. So there we go. Yeah, the comics, I would say I thoroughly enjoyed them as a Sledgehammer fan and a very minor comic book fan.
Yeah.
If you can pick them up, I think if you're a Sledgehammer fan, you would certainly enjoy them.
Absolutely. I mean, the second one is trailed as having Spider-Man in it, which
yeah, a bit of
it's
liberty.
not quite true there. He's on the cover, but liberties have been taken. The one thing I didn't quite get in the first one was what was going on with that car that kept fixing itself.
That was a reference to Christine.
Yeah, but how was a car able to fix itself? We know that Sledge is set in the real world where there's no supernatural activity.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it.
I mean, everything else in it can be explained.
Sure.
That was the one thing that was like,
There was lots of in-jokes and references in the first comic especially. I didn't take a note of them, but...
Yeah, the movie endings, wasn't it? The guy was recreating movie endings. That was the way he was killing off these people. He started off with a Psycho one, which was in the shower.
I've got to say, lots of Hitchcock stuff.
Did you win any Oscars?
The drawings, I thought, were fairly accurate. You could certainly tell it was Sledge and Dory. Dory looking fine as ever on these.
She looks a bit ginger on the cover of that one.
I think it's the light.
Okay. I like Sledge's green and yellow checked jacket.
I'm going to try and get myself one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the comics. Buy them if you can. Worth a read.
Absolutely. And if you've got a friend who also wants a copy, buy them together. Save on postage.
Yeah, let's have a quick chat about that, Ian. So before this podcast began, in preparation, Ian, we can't get these comics in the UK, so Ian goes on to Amazon and he buys them. And I think the comics themselves are a couple of...
It wasn't
pounds.
on Amazon, it was a comic specialist website.
Was it? Right,
Yeah.
okay. The comics themselves were only about £2 or £3, dollars, whatever.
Yeah.
But the...
Postage was about 12
the
or
postage
15
was about 12 or £15, yeah. And he didn't bother to say to me, while I'm doing this, do you want a copy of the... Well, I'll buy 2 of each. Nope, he just buys them. So I only and I now have to go and spend £15 on
a shame
a
for
couple
you.
of dollars worth of comics, yeah. Thanks for that, Ian. Anyway.
It's a good memento that I will keep from doing this podcast.
Yes.
Might frame them, put them up on the wall somewhere.
So Alan Spencer, the man behind Sledge
He gets a
Hammer.
credit in the comics.
Yeah, he does.
I don't think he appears, although I wouldn't be shocked if you could show me a frame that they draw him in, but I don't think his face is included.
He did appear in one of the earlier episodes of Sledgehammer. I mentioned that at the time.
He did, yeah.
Sledgehammer is obviously what he's best known for.
Yeah. My understanding was he was quite young when he got involved with this.
Yeah, he was a bit of a whiz kid.
Yeah, he'd written for some other TV shows as a teenager, I think.
Yeah, I think he was on the studio lot as a youngster. There's some connection with Marty Feldman.
Right.
I think he found a mentor there, or someone he certainly idolised, and he got a break early on. He was inspired very much by Get Smart. Now, lots of the actors, especially the older actors in these Sledgehammer episodes, were also in Get Smart.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something I'm not sure how much we talked about it, but it was quite obvious that there were people in the episodes because they were popular with the people making the decisions about the episodes.
Sure. That was his favourite show as a kid. He was also inspired by what he saw was the comedy in the Dirty Harry movies. So whilst a lot of people couldn't see by the violence and the political messages,
Yeah.
I think there was an element of the ridiculousness that he tapped into.
Yeah.
And he, in fact, wrote the first version of Sledgehammer when he was just a teen.
Okay.
Now, I've seen a couple of glimpses of the script, and it was certainly more X-rated. I think it was more adult. So there was lots of swearing and things like that in it.
I think I saw either a clip or I read an interview somewhere where it was explained that when they actually put the show together, he had a lot more freedom than maybe would be normal, and that he struggled after Sledgehammer with some of the studio. I mean, we talked a lot during the podcast about studio changes or enforced decisions on this show, but if that was it with freedom, you can imagine why a creative writer might feel a bit frustrated when the shackles are then put on.
Yeah. So he wrote this script as a teenager, and the producer of Get Smart, a Mr. Leonard Stern, apparently liked this script and championed him with HBO.
Okay.
So they told him to come over, and
HBO were quite young back then, weren't it?
Mhm. and they're looking to. I think they gave him a bit of a free rein to put together the first show,
Okay.
and they looked at it and said, "Oh, I'm not sure we can do anything with this at all."
Okay.
Now, at the same time, apparently, someone from ABC had expressed an interest and says, "I think we can work with this."
Yeah.
So Alan Spencer goes to a meeting with HBO and lets loose and says, do you know what? He's an idiot. You don't know what you're doing. I'm a genius, etc. I bet I could get this. Any other network would take this and produce it. And they obviously thought he's talking rubbish. It's all bravado, and says, well, on you go, give it a shot. And he says, okay, I will do then, thank you. And the very next day it was...
Oh, because presumably HBO had an option on it at that point.
I think they owned it.
Okay.
So he basically got them railed up, and they thought it was all bravado.
Talked himself into the opportunity.
Yep, and went to ABC, who produced it.
Never looked back.
Yeah. It's an interesting chap. He's also known as a script doctor. I think he's spent a lot of time doing that, or done that quite a bit in Hollywood. So taking other scripts, perhaps not credited for it,
Okay.
but making them good.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of very talented folk are made to... I think that was one of the things that Carrie Fisher got a lot of credit for doing on some very big films, including comedy, popular comedy ones. And I think Joss Whedon did a bit of that as well, between the Buffy movie and the Buffy series. I was just watching a thing about that recently. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's doing the Avengers films now.
Sure. Tell me what you know about Sledgefest, Ian.
Well, I've read up on this. Obviously, there was a bit of time passed between it happening and me looking into it, but it seems to have been a gathering maybe 7 years ago, in 2010, I think, where some of the cast, I think Alan Spencer and maybe others from behind the scenes, were involved, and some big fans came along and they had a bit of a get together. And
yeah, from what I can see, there was a couple of hundred people turned up at the Silent Movie Theatre in LA, October the 10th, 2010.
Okay.
Like Alan Spencer was there, Harrison Page, Beverly Leach, Kurt Paul, Patty Tipo, and perhaps Jill Jacobson. But I'm not sure. I don't think David Rasche or Anne-Marie Martin were there.
No, but they did show up last year. I think January 16.
Well, that would be the 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
The whole reason that we chose 2016 to launch this
absolutely,
podcast.
Of course. Yes, they had an on stage. I've seen at least still shots. I don't think I've seen a recording, but there must be a recording.
All looking good.
All looking fine.
Fit and healthy, yeah.
Sledgehammer in a cardigan was a bit of a weird one, but you know.
Like we said, he's mellowed.
Yeah, Hale and Hearty, they all looked very well, and I understand that was a popular event. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was Sketchfest.
Sounds familiar.
In 2016. So if there is video footage of that out there, maybe someone can point us towards it, because that would be worth sharing. Certainly worth having a look at.
Did you look on YouTube?
Oh no, I didn't look for it. You don't expect me to put any effort into this, do you?
No, I don't.
No. As can be, folk who've listened to 42 episodes of this will be able to tell you.
Okay, I believe, Ian, you have some listener questions for us.
Yeah, I have some. Apologies if we don't cite your name, but we'll try and get through as many of these as possible. Let me think what the best order to do this in. Stephen Cloutier, I think I'm going to go with Cloutier, the French one, asked us, if you had to show one episode to get someone hooked on Sledgehammer, which one would you choose?
I think it's easy enough to identify the episodes I wouldn't show them.
Yeah.
So, play it again, Sledge.
It's not typical of the show.
The last episode,
Yeah.
Desperately Seeking Dory.
Okay.
So there's certain episodes that they're fantastic episodes, but they're not typical. I mean, you can't go far wrong with the pilot, obviously.
There's a couple I liked. So, Dory Day Afternoon's a good one with the flight hijacker and so on. I think the vampire one, Last Night About Vampires, is a very good episode. Need to be careful about where you jump in, but I think that one's fine. That doesn't have to be in sequence to be okay.
Comrade Hammer is nice, but as discussed, it may be a little bit too
Dated.
Off its time. The Old Man and the Sledge.
It's a good episode. Definitely.
Witless.
I don't know. That's again, it's not the normal.
You really have to know about Witness to appreciate a lot of the comedy.
Yeah, and I think that might be one of those episodes that's better watched after you've seen more of the show. Because I found Witless a bit of a struggle when I watched it. But I think now, knowing Sledge better, it would be more fun to watch that again.
If I had to choose one, and I'm not saying this is the the best episode or my favourite episode, but To Live and Die on TV, I think it shows the characters in a fairly typical light.
Okay, I like as an introduction, maybe something, like I said, The Vampires or Miss of the Spider-Woman from season 1. That was quite a good show.
Yeah, good choices. Okay, next question.
Okay, this one's from Tom, who asks, who's your favourite of the recurring characters and why?
Easy, Blades.
You think?
Yeah, he is quite odd, but he's funny.
He is really the only proper recurring character that you have. I mean, Daly and Mayjoy are there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think who else is only in some episodes.
You've got Wanda, who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, she's in a couple. I like, in fact, can I choose Sledge's ever-changing landlady?
You can.
I think it's quite good because she's always so different every time she shows up.
Okay, there we go.
Another one from Tom asks, well, these are two questions together. Favourite episode from each season, and which season did you prefer?
There are so many to choose from.
Let's start with season 1.
I shall go with Jagged Sledge.
I'll choose All Shook Up from season 1.
Can't argue with that.
No.
Season 2, I mean, obviously I like the last episode, I think everyone does, but if I had to choose another one, I would be going for Icebreaker with Adamant.
See, there's a few that I like in season 2. Sledge and Toyland's a good one.
Hammeroid.
I think I'm going to go with Sledge Rattle and Roll, which I quite enjoy.
Two very rocky ones you're going for, rock and roll ones you're going for there.
Just by chance.
Did they ask us what the favourite?
Yeah, which season did you prefer?
Have to go with the first.
I preferred the second season.
Uh-huh.
I think it's because it finishes strongly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the second half of season 2 was much better than the first half of season 2, and therefore I'm left with rosy feelings, whereas I think season 1 started strong and then had a lull and maybe a couple of good episodes at the end. So I'm going with season 2, although it's close. If you could take the start of season 1, the last couple of episodes, and then the last half of season 2, that would be the ideal run.
Yeah, but in fairness, I'm looking through a list of them or thinking about a list of them, and there's not many bad episodes. I mean, I didn't particularly enjoy the first of season 2, so A Clockwork Hammer.
Mm-hmm.
That aside, I can't say that there are episodes that stand out for me not enjoying.
Oh, hang on. I'm going to change my favourite one from season 2. I'm putting Play It Again Sledge as my favourite from season 2. I really enjoyed that show.
Yeah, I think we can both have that as a
Wild card.
Yeah.
That's our wild card overall favourite.
Yeah. Okay, next question.
Okay, one last one from Tom is whether I will watch Sledge again now that the podcast is finished.
Just you.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
But
I'm not bothered.
I think we should both answer it. I don't know. We've got other projects coming up that are going to take a lot of my viewing time, but it's not like I would turn it off if it came on.
I think the issue is with Sledge Hammer. I think why it's not as big and as popular today as some other shows is that, and this may be different in the States or other places in the world, but it's just not, it's not on. I mean, compared to our previous project, Columbo's never off the TV all over the world.
Yeah, you get 6 episodes a weekend.
Yeah. So it's easy to consume it. Sledgehammer, I think for many people, they've never seen it before.
Even the DVDs are hard to get hold of. I think we had to import
It's a
German copies, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can get it on YouTube, but it's just not the same. So that's the thing. I agree with you as well, Ian, that we've got lots of other things to be watching. So in the near future, I can't see myself putting on getting out my way to watch I don't have time to watch a Sledgehammer DVD.
I think maybe one day though, I'll sit down and watch some of it again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm in the habit, or I have been in the habit of watching Sledge episodes on the bus to work as a sort of a reminder after I've done my notes, just the day we're recording. So maybe do that one morning on the bus.
Oh yeah, if you want a little pick me up.
Yeah.
That's the thing, yeah, I think I would like to see it back on the TV. I think all these channels we've got these days, someone could show it. Come on.
Yeah.
And if it was on, we'd both watch it.
Would you support a reboot with Ryan Gosling as Sledgehammer?
Ryan Gosling as Sledgehammer. Yeah, I would.
Or Channing Tatum? I think he'd be quite good as Sledgehammer.
No, I'd rather go for Gosling.
Okay, don't tell your wife.
Next question.
Okay, well, let's just have one more question because we don't want to get bogged down in this section. But Ian asks us, not me, a different Ian.
Ian Baxter.
Yeah,
hey,
believe it or
hi,
not,
Ian.
our old friend. He says, do you think they should have come back for a third season or was 2 enough? I would say it would have been great to see more, but it had a perfect ending, so I wouldn't want to come back after that. And you see this on shows, they have this great finale and then they get another season and they ruin it. So I'm quite content that they left it where they left it.
Yeah, I am happy to leave it where it was. Said earlier that they did very well, considering the type of show it is, to keep it interesting and fresh through these 41 episodes. I think if you went for another sort of 20 or so, you might start to struggle. So, no, I'm content that they left it where it ended.
Excellent.
Okay.
There is actually one more question that's occurred to me.
Okay.
People around the globe will be wondering, and I say around the globe, we've got fans of Sledgehammer have contacted us from all over the place: Germany, Argentina, America, the United Kingdom, other places as well.
Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of them are the Americans that have fled to Canada since the election. But they're asking us, what are they going to do now that there's no more Sledgecast? Where will they be able to hear us? What are we going to be up to?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked.
It's not me, it's our fans around the world that are desperate to know.
Sorry, yeah, of course. By the time this episode drops, actually, we may have launched our new project.
You say projects?
Yes. We have not one, but 2 new podcasts.
2 new podcasts, you say? Separate?
One is going to be Jonathan Creek.
Oh, that's a popular show. Detective type drama.
Yeah, if you like Columbo, you will certainly like Jonathan Creek, I feel.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that might be a longer format podcast than Sledgecast has been.
Yeah, it'll be similar to the Columbo podcast. We might be looking at
60 to 90 minutes.
60 to 90 minute podcast. Block out our diary, tell the wife.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and we're also going to be considering the British comedy classic from the 80s and 90s, Blackadder. All 4 seasons plus specials.
Very BBC.
Very BBC. Very funny. Now, we will have special introductory episodes to both podcasts explaining the background and what we're doing, why we're doing it in due course.
Probably before now. Yeah.
Before now, yeah. It's they will be out, so you can have a listen to those. Hopefully, by this point, you already have to listen to. But we would certainly encourage you, ask you to join us on those 2 podcasts. What we're going to do, I think, Ian, is we're going to alternate each week.
Okay, is this a decision that's been made?
I'm not doing 2 a week.
Okay, so each show will be fortnightly, but not on the same week.
Precisely. That's very complicated, Ian. So 1 week it will be Jonathan Creek, the next week it will be Blackadder.
So if you only listen to one of them, you'll have a long wait between episodes.
You'll have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of podcasting to be done, a lot of watching, a lot of note-taking, and I don't have the time to be, and neither do you, I don't think, to be doing 2 per week.
The 2 series are a similar length, but I suspect we'll get Blackadder recorded first. Or finished first,
we'll see. Blackadder has a lot more specials.
That's true, and it's probably got a lot more guests that have done a lot more things because more time has passed. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to both those shows. The format will be slightly different because it's not the same where you've seen it and I've not. I have watched both of those shows previously.
Yep, we'll need to work out how we're going to do that.
Trial and error. I think that's the way to go. People have loved us for trial and error for years.
Yeah, more error than trial.
Certainly more errors than trials, and there was a trial in every episode.
Fuck, we'll get there. How can people get in touch? How can people follow what we're up to with regards to those 2 podcasts? Ian?
Okay, so there are Twitter accounts for both of those. It's at Blackadder Pod for Blackadder, and it's at Creek Podcast for Jonathan Creek.
What about websites?
www.blackadderpodcast.com and www.jonathancreekpodcast.com.
I assume that at some point in the future we'll also have Facebook malarkey.
Facebook will be up and running in due course. I think you need a certain number of people to like it before you can actually get the URL sorted out and stuff like that. So maybe go search on Facebook if you can find it and like it. And
if not, you'll get it on the website.
There'll be links out from the website. Yeah.
I think that's about us, but before we wrap up, we need to say thank you.
Yes, to all the listeners for all the time they've spent with us over the past, almost a year.
Yeah. Every single one of you, thank you very much. That's the only reason we're doing it. We would not, it's purely ego. If no one listened, we wouldn't bother doing this.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
No. So we truly do appreciate all your feedback, all your interactions, everyone who has spent time with us, whether it's in the shower, going to sleep, in bed,
In the gym,
in the gym,
on the bus,
walking the dog,
anywhere.
anywhere, yes.
But not you, Jeffrey.
Who's Jeffrey? Oh, that Jeffrey. Yeah, Jeffrey, stop listening. You're not welcome.
All that remains for us to say, and this goes for you as well, Jeffrey, put some pants on.
Rice Krispies.
Are you serious?
No.